Hello everyone! I've been getting some requests for tutorials, so I wanted to start off by showing you how I stretch watercolor paper. Because I'm a gouache and watercolor painter mostly, I always like to stretch paper on a board before I begin an important painting. There's many other ways to do this, but I'm just going to show you the method that I use pretty much on a weekly basis and the way that I was taught. Now, I always start off by trimming my paper so that I have a margin of exposed board around the paper. That's where your butcher's tape is going to stick. You need it to stick to both the board and the paper. Next up, I fill my soaking tray with very cold water. You can use a plastic tray of any sort or a bathtub. And then I check my paper for the watermark to make sure that it's the right way up. If you can read the watermark like you see here, that's the correct side of the paper that you want facing up. That's the side you want to paint on. So I just keep that up when I put it into the tray. I let it soak right side up and I place it right side up afterwards. I'm going to put on the screen here some general guidelines for how long to soak your paper, which is dependent on the weight of the paper. This paper that I'm using today is 140-pound paper, so I soaked it for about 15 minutes. Meanwhile, while my paper is soaking, it's important to pre-cut your butcher's tape so that it's ready to go as soon as your paper is done soaking. I measure it to each side, and because the tape that I own presently is quite wide, I actually cut it in half so that I'm not covering too much of my paper that I could be using to paint on it. So if you find that your tape is too wide, you can always cut it. That's totally fine. Now, when your paper is done soaking, and make sure you don't over soak it, it's better to be under soaked than over soaked. Take it out, let it drain off some of the excess water, and then place it carefully on your board so that you have equal margins on each side. Now, next up, you're going to want to run your butcher's tape through your cup or bowl of water to activate the adhesive. I'll show you how I do this here. I take the pre-cut strip and I hold it in sort of a curve and just run it through the water really fast. You don't want it in there for very long, and you definitely don't need a lot of water to activate the adhesive. You want the water to go onto there, but not enough so that it soaks everything off and the adhesive just ends up in your cup instead of on your board where you need it. Then you apply it to your board. Make sure to have it flush with the edges. You don't necessarily want overlap around the edges. That can make the tension a bit odd. So just make sure to keep it on the surface level. Don't wrap it over the corners, over the sides. And then make sure you really press it down onto the paper. It's important for it to stick, so I really get my arms into it and really press it with my fingertips all along, just so that you're really sure that it's going to have the best possible chance of sticking. Then, for added security, if you're starting a new roll of tape or you don't know how the paper will behave, you can always staple your butcher's tape to your paper. Once everything's all secure, it's just a matter of waiting. You want to make sure your paper is completely dry before you start painting on it, so I usually stretch all my papers a day in advance. I give them a nice 12 to 24 hours to air dry. And sometimes it's just not going to turn out right. Maybe your tape didn't stick, maybe the paper's really weird and it busts off the board. Sometimes you can re-stretch a paper, but because the sizing in the paper comes out when you soak it, basically that paper becomes scrap. So that's okay. Always have backup paper if you can afford it, and don't worry if you have to re-stretch. Paper can be finicky, but it also can be wonderful to paint on. So I have a love and hate relationship with stretching paper, but mostly it's just love. And I find that it's my favorite thing to paint on, and I hope that if you've ever been interested in stretching your own watercolor paper, that this video helped you out. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any other questions about this tutorial or about anything else, feel free to leave me a comment in the section below. Have a great day.